The athlete I decided to create is a 21-year-old female who is a collegiate soccer player at UNC Chapel Hill. She grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, to an upper middle class family and never really had any issues getting access to food, and she always had access to the best travel teams and everything. Growing up, that's a pretty big thing for development in athletes is being able to play as often as possible and on some of the best teams. So she always had that. Stephanie's family is Roman Catholic, which luckily doesn't affect what she can and can't eat very much, only around Lent. Um, and for the past year, Stephanie has been steadily losing weight. She couldn't figure out why, so she ended up going to see a doctor and an allergist. And she found out from the allergist that she had an allergy to chocolate, oats, dairy, citrus fruits, and also had celiac disease. So Stephanie now has to figure out how to eat without access to a lot, as well as being on a meal plan for her college. As someone who's been in school, I understand that there are not always the best options or the healthiest options when it comes to eating at school. And I'm sure for her, there's a lot of cross contamination that goes on as well. So finding food has been quite difficult recently, especially because she has lost so much weight. She needs to be eating an increase in calories almost every day to put her weight back on. So I'd like to focus on increasing her lean mass and protein. And as an aerobic endurance athlete, she definitely needs a lot of carbs as well. Just to start for her, I started Stephanie eating um, just the amount of calories that meets her resting metabolic rate, just because she hadn't been eating very much at all, and it's going to be a struggle for her to eat the amount of calories that she needs every day. So I wanted to start low and kind of increase that by 500 calories every day, or every, I also wanted her to have an increase in protein and carbs, because she does need to build more lean mass. And as an aerobic endurance athlete, she's going to get a lot of her energy from carbohydrates. So I had her at 20% protein, 61% carbs, and like 19% fat, but for her daily recommendations. For an aerobic endurance athlete, their carbs should be anywhere between 55 to 65% of their daily calories. So I put Stephanie at 61%, because I needed to increase her carb or her protein intake. So it says that the book says that we should have an aerobic athlete anywhere between 5 and 15%, but because she needs to put on so much weight and gain so much more lean mass than she normally would, I ended up putting her at 20% of her daily calories for protein. And I had the rest of her carbs just come from fat. Not the rest of her carbs, the rest of her calorie intake come from fat. Because Stephanie needed to gain so much weight back, I have her for the first 4 weeks, increasing her calories every week by 500. It's going to be really hard for her to eat everything just in general, and to actually be able to intake around 3,000 calories a day. So I wanted to start her off trying to gain only a pound um, every week instead of two. I don't think she'd be able to do that. As far as nutrient timing goes, prior to training, either about 1 to 4 hours prior to training, Stephanie should be ingesting 4 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. And for her, that comes out to about a meal that has 218 grams in carbs before she works out. During training, Stephanie should continue to intake carbs, and that's usually done in like a sport drink that has carbs or one of the gels. And then post training, she should be ingesting about 80 grams of carbs directly after exercise, within 30 minutes after exercise. And doesn't, if that doesn't happen, she should be eating about 44 grams of carbs every 2 hours for the next 2 to 6 hours after exercise, and then she should also be ingesting protein, and it's at about 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and that comes out to like 21 to 22 grams of protein after exercise, along with her intake of carbs. For supplements, I have Stephanie taking BCAAs after her workouts just because she does have a lot to do. She works out in the morning and then has to go to class directly after. That'll help with fatigue and then help her focus in class. And because Stephanie has a gluten allergy, she doesn't always get the amount of carbs that she needs. So I had her on a supplement of waxy maize of about 55 kilograms or grams post exercise. And because of her celiac disease, a lot of people have deficiencies in iron, calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, and B12. So I also have her taking a multivitamin that has all of those in that. And that'll be a daily multivitamin. So that way, if she has not gained everything that she needs from her food, that'll help keep her levels high and also keep her system able to absorb all the nutrients that she needs. This athlete profile challenged me a lot just because I don't play soccer. I've never been an endurance athlete, so having to learn and do a nutrition plan for someone that is an endurance athlete was different. Um, I've also never had an allergy to any food or anything like that, so having to implement supplements or having to find things that work around that when it comes to her eating was very difficult and something that I hadn't had to think of ever in my life. And now I have this whole plan that I had to go through and recognize, oh, she can't have this. She can't have like bread for carbs. She can't have a multigrain toast in the morning. So that was really difficult for me as well. My perspective has also changed a lot going through all of this because for most of my life, eating healthy hasn't been a huge priority. Like, we always followed kind of basic guidelines, like, oh, have carbs and some meat for dinner. But my dad used to always make us eat potatoes with dinner. He's like, you always have to have a starch. So it's things like that were never really paid attention to. In my house, we kind of just ate a relatively balanced meal just because that's kind of just how it worked out. Like, we always had meat and a starch with dinner. Like, there was never a day that we didn't. But vegetables really weren't that big a thing in my family. So having to find different um, vegetables and fruits, and then learning that a lot of vegetables and fruits actually have a ton of carbs in them was something that was a little weird for me, and something that I didn't realize until I started doing this project. Um, and even when it comes to food, I guess I do have a lot of preconceived biases just because of the way I grew up, maybe. Like, we never, again, never really had vegetables around, so we never ate a lot of super healthy foods, salads, that kind of thing. And I always thought growing up that like vegetables were gross and they could never taste good and that sort of thing. So when it comes to having learned about all this food that you do need to eat to have a well balanced diet, has definitely wanted to push me a little bit more to find something for this athlete profile that works for her because she does have so many issues and complications that make things different, and like, as well as helping myself understand that some of these things really do help. And like, eating, I never really thought growing up that nutrition meant all that much. I just thought you had to spend most of your time in the gym and then you'll be fine. I never really realized how much a nutrition plan and a well balanced diet actually did makes a difference. For this athlete profile, I really had to Google a lot of things. I really had to dig into the textbook to try and find how much of every macro she needed, how much she should be eating for her activity level and for everything. So I had to do a ton of research, especially when it came to finding foods that Stephanie could eat. When it came to having a gluten allergy, having celiac disease is hard, and it actually causes a lot of intestinal issues, which I did not know before. So I had to think outside of the box a lot on everything that I needed to do for Stephanie because it was so different. Her everything was so different from what I had experienced before and in my life. Very few people in my life have anything other than a peanut allergy. So this was definitely something that I ended up using the internet a lot for and finding things for her. It was mostly her celiac disease that caused the biggest issues, but also the fact that she was allergic to oats and dairy. Like she couldn't have a glass of milk to increase anything. She had to have soy milk, or she had to have, like, she couldn't have oatmeal in the morning for breakfast, which is super popular. So I had to grow a lot to accommodate this athlete and this nutrition plan. And I think it really helped a ton to make me a better coach and to just think things through more. And now I feel like a lot more able to help someone, even if I'm not a licensed nutritionist, but I can give them like a brief guide for what they could do to help themselves get better and to eat better.